The songs seem to wander, to show up and disappear, ghostly with no highs or lows. At their kindest, they are simply ironic. Some, like Africa Talks to You, The Asphalt Jungle, are morbid, chased into hiding by the band. Sly shouts back, "Timber!" and the guitar mocks him into silence. Brave and Strong pleads for survival, but hints that only dope will get it. Two tracks were released as singles, Family Affair and Running Away. Both were hits and both had a deceptively easy movement. But the first was about finding your way back to mother and a marriage falling to pieces. And the second used a saucy female chorus to drive nails into a fool. The album found its end with Thank You for Talking to Me, Africa, a reversal of Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again. There's no vocal music and rock and roll to match it. The voices creep in and out of the instruments, cutting out in the middle of a line. Messages from limbo, golem talk. I'm a dying, you can hear Sly wailing. And the only way to disbelieve is to stop listening. The song gathers up all the devastation of the rest of the album and slowly drives it home, grinds it in, and fades out. This music defines the world of the Stagger Lee who does not get away and who finds hell as advertised. There is an enormous reality to the music, a slow, level sense of getting by. It is Muzak with its finger on the trigger. The essence of the rhythms James Brown has explored without the compensations of Brown's showmanship or his badass lyrics. It is a reality of day-to-day sameness and an absence of variety, like Prison, that requires, if one is to endure it, either a deadening of all the senses or a preternatural sharpening of them, so that the smallest change of mood or event can be seized. On as representing something novel or meaningful. I'm going to reread that last sentence. It is a reality of day-to-day sameness and an absence of variety, like Prison, that requires, if one is to endure it, either a deadening of all the senses or a preternatural sharpening of them, so that the smallest change of mood or event can be seized on as representing something novel or meaningful. In this sense, and only at the farthest margin, the music is part of the way out of the disaster it affirms. If you listen, you get sharper and you begin to hear what the band is hearing. Every bass line or vocal nuance eventually takes on great force. The disaster gains an emotional complexity, and you enter it. Finally, Riot bears the same relationship to most music as George Jackson's Soledad Brother does to Confidential. The second is easier to get into, but nothing is there. Stand, the brilliant album that preceded Riot and literally turned black music inside out with its flash and innovation, had all the drive and machinery of a big semi-truck. Listening to it put you in the driver's seat, made you feel like you owned the road. Riot is about getting off the truck. The mood is one of standing still, of performing every act with the care of one who is not sure his mind and his body will quite connect. Of falling apart, of running, looking back, realizing you can be caught. Quote, looking at the devil, grinning at his gun, fingers start shaking, I begin to run. Bullets start chasing, I begin to stop. We begin to wrestle. I was on the top. End of quote. That's from Thank You for Talking to Me, Africa. When the song was released a year earlier as Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, it had a snappy rhythm. It was a winner song, and neither the music nor the vocals left any doubt as to who was going to stay on top. On Riot, the song comes slowly, emphasizing the thud of the bass guitar. The words are buried in a slurred half chant. When Sly sings Thank You for Letting Me Be Myself Again, the contempt in his voice is inescapable. Notice how the song reads. The words Sly wrote for Riot are some of the most imaginative and forceful in all of rock and roll. The images are perfectly developed. The songs achieve a tense and eerie balance, as each element of the music seems to pull more than its own weight. Not one image, not one note is wasted. Nothing is gratuitous. Man, what a compliment. One song, Poet, was called pretentious because it said such things as I'm a songwriter, oh yeah, a poet. The number is intentionally crude, but in the end such a song is pretentious only if it is false. And although for rock and roll the terms themselves are probably false, the words of the songs on this album are better poetry than anything the rock poets have written. The rock poets are all of them white, of course, because the rock and roll audience and rock critics often think in neat racial categories, and black does not fit into the poetry category. When Bob Dylan quipped that Smokey Robinson was America's greatest poet, most people thought that was some kind of joke. Of all the nonsense that has been written about the poetry of Neil Young, Paul Simon, or even Bob Dylan, no one has ever said anything about Jimi Hendrix's Little Wing. The poetry question, especially when we are dealing with a song, has to do with how a writer uses language. And his music will be part of his language, to make words do things they ordinarily do not do. With how he tests the limits of language and alters and extends the conventional impact of images, or rescues resources of language that we have lost or destroyed. The music on Riot mostly flattens out what Sly wrote. The music on Riot mostly flattens out what Sly wrote, hiding it, telling the truth, but not quite out loud. The words peek out, and only occasionally do they hit you in the face. Quote, looking at the devil, grinning at his gun, fingers start shaking, I begin to run, bullets start chasing, I begin to stop. The poetry of those lines is the use of the words start and begin. Which slow the usual pace of the violent images Sly is presenting. The eye is working here, taking in the scene from the edge of action. The description is minimal and the economy is absolute. The eye turns and the listener or the reader is given only a vague sense of physical motion. A whole body aware of itself with the precision of the eye in the first three lines. You feel the slowing down, the endless instantaneous decisions and hesitations involved in turning to face the gun again. It all moves in pieces and you are in the song, in the riot, breathing its risk.